The wind whipped across the frozen cliffside, slicing through Officer Marcus Hale's jacket like a blade. His K-9 partner, Shadow, sat rigid at the edge, eyes locked on something far below, refusing to move. Marcus felt the familiar prickle of unease crawling up his spine. Something was buried in the snow, something that didn't belong, something that would change everything. He glanced at the camera mounted on his chest and muttered, almost to himself, "You might want to see this, if you can handle it." Shadow growled low, the sound vibrating in Marcus's chest, warning him that whatever lay beneath was far from dead. The forest below the cliff was a white blur, the snow-heavy pines bending under their own weight. Each tree seemed to sag under a burden far heavier than snow, as if the very earth above it was pressing down, trying to hide something. Marcus Hale's boots crunched against the frozen ground, the sound painfully loud in the oppressive silence. Shadow moved in tight circles around him, growling low, each rumble vibrating through Marcus's chest. The dog's fur bristled, hackles stiff. Marcus had worked with K-9 units for years, but this was different. This wasn't the usual instinct for hidden drugs, explosives, or human scent. This was primal fear. "I don't see anything yet, boy," Marcus whispered, trying to mask the tremor in his voice. He felt the cold gnawing at him, deep into his bones, the wind slicing like knives across his face. He squinted down at the steep drop, at jagged rocks jutting like skeletal fingers from the cliff's edge. The abyss seemed endless. Even with years of training, he felt like a novice again, helpless in the face of something that didn't belong. Shadow barked sharply, snapping Marcus from his thoughts. The dog's eyes were locked on a particular point below, where the snow had collapsed unnaturally. Marcus felt a deep, involuntary shiver run down his spine. Something, or someone, was down there. He swallowed hard, trying to calm his racing heart. All right, he muttered, gripping the rope in his hand. He could almost hear Shadow saying, "Go down, find out what it is." The radio crackled. Officer Reyes's voice filtered through faintly, distorted by the wind. "Marcus, you still out there?" Marcus's teeth chattered as he replied, "Yeah, just checking the perimeter." His voice sounded foreign, weak even to him. Shadow growled again, his low rumble vibrating through the rope. Marcus knew the dog wasn't wrong. Something was buried beneath the snow, something that didn't belong in this quiet corner of the forest. He inched closer to the edge. The railing installed for hikers was coated in ice, slick and treacherous. Each step was a gamble. He could feel the snow shifting underfoot, threatening to give way. Shadow pressed closer, refusing to move backward. Marcus reached out, stroking the dog's thick neck, whispering, "It's okay, boy. I got you." But Shadow only stiffened, growling louder, hackles raised like steel needles. Then Marcus saw it. The snow had collapsed around a shape, an unnatural indentation that made his stomach churn. Boots stuck out from the ice, dark against the white, twisted at odd angles. A scarf, red and tangled, wrapped around a frozen neck, frost forming jagged crystals over its edges. Marcus felt bile rise in his throat. Recognition hit him like a punch. He knew those boots. Knew the person who had worn them. A member of the local hiking club, someone he had spoken to just weeks ago. Someone declared missing. Shadow barked again, insistent. Marcus swallowed, fighting nausea. He tried to pull the dog back, tugging on the harness, but Shadow resisted, straining toward the cliff's edge. It wasn't fear or aggression driving him, it was a warning. Something down there demanded attention. Marcus secured the rope to his harness and began the descent. Each movement was painstaking. The cliff face crumbled under gloved hands, small stones and ice tumbling into the abyss. Shadow followed close, keeping his nose trained on the snow-blanketed corpse. As they neared the base, the beam of Marcus's flashlight caught something strange. Around the body, snow had been disturbed in a geometric pattern, almost ritualistic in nature. Lines crisscrossed the white blanket, leading to small, melted electronics, charred remnants of flashlights, cameras, and even a GPS tracker. The arrangement was deliberate, almost surgical. Someone had been here before him, arranging things with a precise intent. Marcus's heart hammered in his chest. He crouched beside the boots, noting the frostbitten fingers and the frozen, glassy eyes. The face was pale, lips cracked and blue, but the expression, it seemed almost purposeful. The victim hadn't just fallen. They had been placed, arranged, and then left. Shadow pressed against Marcus's leg, whining low, then barking sharply toward the forest. Marcus followed the dog's gaze and froze. A figure emerged from the shadows. Tall, thin, hunched against the wind, cloaked in layers of snow-drenched clothing, hood pulled low. Face obscured. The figure stopped, frozen, hands raised. "I didn't do it," the voice said, quivering. "I didn't push him. You have to believe me." Marcus's mind raced. The figure's eyes darted nervously from the body to the tree-line beyond. "They're watching. You shouldn't be here. They won't let anyone leave," the stranger whispered. Marcus reached for the radio. Nothing. The signal was dead. His pulse pounded, shadow and stranger frozen in the icy night. The forest felt alive, every branch, every pine needle holding a secret, every gust of wind whispering something sinister. "What do you mean, they're watching?" Marcus demanded, voice harsh, trying to steady himself. They don't like witnesses," the stranger said. Snow fell from the hood as the figure stepped back. "You need to leave now, before they notice you." Shadow growled low, but Marcus ignored the warning. "Not without answers," he said. His breath formed clouds in the frigid air. "Who are you? Who did this?" The stranger shook their head violently. "I can't. Not yet. You don't know what's out there. Not yet. Just trust me. Go back." Marcus's thoughts raced. The cliff, the staged body, the geometric snow patterns, the electronics, it was all a message or a trap. But his gut twisted at the thought of leaving this person behind, leaving the truth buried under snow and ice. Shadow growled again, pressing against Marcus, urging him to listen, to confront, to act. The wind shifted suddenly, carrying a sound, subtle, almost imperceptible. A faint whisper, lost among the icy gusts. Marcus froze. "Hello." His voice barely rose above the wind, swallowed immediately. Shadow barked, low and continuous, tense. Then the whisper came again. Clearer, distinct, uttering his name. Marcus's stomach turned cold. He spun, flashlight beam cutting through the falling snow, but there was nothing. Only the pines, skeletal and silent. The figure glanced nervously toward the shadows, then back at him. "I didn't want this," the stranger said quietly, voice trembling. "I tried to warn them. But you weren't supposed to see." Marcus felt a chill creep through him. The snow around them seemed to shift, almost animate, as though hiding something alive beneath its frozen crust. He realized then the weight of the cliff, the forest, the unseen eyes watching from the shadows. Whatever had claimed this place was deliberate, patient, and cruel. He looked at Shadow. The dog's eyes glowed faintly in the beam, unflinching. Marcus knew he was right. Some truths couldn't be left undiscovered. And as night descended, the forest seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the next move. The wind carried one last whisper before silence fell. A name. A plea. A warning. Marcus didn't know which, but he knew the cliff held secrets that would haunt him long after he left. And deep in his chest, a dread settled. This was only the beginning. The wind had died down slightly by the time Marcus and Shadow had secured the stranger at a safer distance from the cliff edge. The snow crunched underfoot, sharp and brittle, each step echoing across the frozen void. Marcus's gloves were soaked, numb from both cold and adrenaline, but he hardly noticed. Shadow remained tense, low growl rumbling in his chest, eyes scanning every shadow that moved in the pale moonlight. The stranger's hood had slipped slightly, revealing dark, disheveled hair and eyes rimmed with fear and exhaustion. "I'm Marcus Hale, officer," Marcus said, voice firm but careful. "Now, start talking. Who are you? What happened here?" The stranger flinched, glancing at the cliff, then back at Marcus. "You shouldn't be here," they said again. Their voice quavered, but there was a strange, urgent clarity in it. "This isn't just a body. It's something else. You can't leave now without knowing." Marcus frowned. "Something else." They swallowed hard. "The ones who did this, they don't leave witnesses. And they've been watching this cliff for weeks. Months. That hiker, he wasn't the first." Marcus froze. "Not the first." The stranger nodded, shivering despite the layers of clothing. There's a pattern. Every disappearance, every accident, they're all staged. But no one believes it. The local authorities, they dismiss it as unfortunate hiking accidents. But I've seen them. The people behind it. They control the patterns. Shadow growled sharply, and Marcus shot a glare at the dog. The canine's instincts were always correct. He felt the hairs on the back of his neck rise. Who controls the patterns? Marcus asked cautiously. The stranger's lips trembled. People you think you can trust. Marcus's jaw tightened. Be specific. The stranger hesitated, glancing around as though the forest itself might have ears. The council. The local council, the wealthy families. They call themselves guardians, but they decide who disappears. They protect their own secrets, Marcus. They've been doing this for decades. Marcus's stomach twisted. He had grown up in this town, knew the families, had trusted many of them in law enforcement circles. He had trusted them himself. The thought that they could orchestrate such horrors, hiding them under the guise of misadventure, was almost too much to process. The stranger took a hesitant step closer, voice dropping. I tried to leave. I reported some of it once. They made an example. That's why the snow patterns, the electronics, so people like you and me see it, think it's just an accident, then get drawn in. They watch reactions. They decide who lives, who doesn't. Marcus's mind raced. Shadow pressed close to him, growling in warning. Marcus could feel it, the same unexplainable dread that had gnawed at him when they first saw the body. He needed proof. He needed answers. But every instinct screamed danger. You've seen them? Marcus asked slowly. The council members? Who did this? The stranger shook their head. No. I've seen the aftermath. The arrangements. The patterns. The bodies, but never the faces directly. Only their messengers. Shadow's low growl deepened, and the dog's hackles raised. Marcus followed his gaze into the darkening forest. Movement, subtle, deliberate. A shadow slipping between trees, barely noticeable against the snow. He raised his flashlight. Nothing. But the feeling of being watched intensified. Listen to me, the stranger whispered urgently. You can't trust anyone. Not your colleagues, not the sheriff. They've been compromised. They want the truth buried. If you try to report this now, their eyes filled with fear. You'll be the next to vanish. Marcus felt a cold rush of nausea. The snow around them seemed heavier now, oppressive, almost alive. He glanced down at the hiker's frozen body. The arrangements, the patterns, the electronics, everything pointed to the same meticulous, calculated planning. And yet the stranger's warning added a layer of horror he hadn't considered. This was bigger than a missing hiker. It was organized. Institutional. Why show me this then? Marcus asked, voice hoarse. If I'm next, why involve me? The stranger looked at him with haunted eyes. Because Shadow chose you. Marcus blinked. Shadow. The dog's gaze was unwavering, locked on a point beyond the body, toward the forest. Shadow had been drawn here, compelled by something. Marcus felt a shiver of realization. Shadow wasn't just reacting to the body or the cliff, he was reacting to the invisible threads of something far darker. You're saying, Marcus began, hesitation in his voice, that the dog can sense them? The stranger nodded, shivering. He can sense the arrangements, the wrongness. He knows who can't be trusted. That's why he wouldn't leave the edge. He sensed it from the beginning. Marcus exhaled slowly, processing this. Shadow had always been more than a trained police dog, more instinct than training, more intuition than behavior. But even Marcus had never seen anything like this. Not until now. Suddenly, a sharp crack echoed through the forest. Snow fell from a branch somewhere above, hitting the ground like a gunshot. The stranger stiffened. They know we're here, they whispered. They'll come for us. We need to move. Marcus glanced at the cliff edge. The rope would allow only one of them to ascend safely at a time. But leaving the body behind, leaving the truth buried, was not an option. He felt the weight of responsibility crushing him. "Follow me," he said, voice low. "We'll move carefully. Shadow stays with me." They navigated the uneven terrain, snow crunching underfoot, each step deliberate. The stranger stumbled once, and Marcus grabbed their arm to steady them. Shadow remained alert, ears rotating, sensing danger before it arrived. The wind shifted again, carrying a faint whisper, almost intelligible, almost mocking. Marcus's skin crawled. He felt watched. He was sure of it. Every instinct screamed that someone, or something, was observing them, calculating their next move. Hours passed, or maybe minutes. Time had lost meaning in the snow and cold. Eventually, they reached a small outcropping, sheltered from wind, trees forming a jagged barrier behind them. Marcus set down his flashlight, crouching beside Shadow. The stranger sank to the snow, shivering violently. "They're patient," they said. "Patient, careful. They've been watching me for months. They've been testing me." Marcus clenched his fists. "Testing you?" "Yes," the stranger whispered. "They set traps, watched reactions. The patterns, their instructions, warnings, messages. And every disappearance, every staged accident, it's a lesson in obedience. You either follow the rules, or you disappear." Marcus's mind reeled. The concept of a small-town council orchestrating disappearances under the guise of misadventure, testing people, watching reactions, it was unfathomable. And yet the evidence was here. The body, the electronics, the geometric patterns in the snow. Shadow nudged Marcus's hand, whining softly. The dog's instincts were never wrong. Marcus looked down into those amber eyes and felt a shiver of realization. They weren't safe. Not yet. Not until they uncovered the full truth. The stranger glanced at Marcus, eyes filled with desperation. "You have to see the registry," they said. "They keep records. Names, dates, locations, everything. It's in a cabin, near the edge of the forest, abandoned. I was going to go there tonight, but they knew I was coming. I couldn't." Marcus frowned. "And you want me to go?" The stranger nodded. "You have to. If we don't, more people will disappear. Shadow, he can help. He'll lead you safely, at least part of the way." Marcus weighed the risk. The forest was isolated. The cliff was treacherous. And if the stranger's claims were true, powerful people had orchestrated the murders and accidents. He could be walking straight into a trap. But Shadow's insistence, the growl that had never left his throat, convinced him. The dog had sensed this before Marcus had even seen the body. Shadow was not just a companion. He was a guide, a guardian in this frozen nightmare. "I'll do it," Marcus said finally, voice firm. "But we need to be careful. One wrong move and we're done. No second chances." The stranger nodded, shivering. "There's something else," they said quietly. "One of them, they might be closer than you think. Someone you trust, might be helping them." Marcus froze. Betrayal. The word echoed through him, sharper than the cold. His mind raced over colleagues, fellow officers, anyone in the town he had trusted. Could it really be someone working for them? The forest seemed to close in around him, the shadows deeper, more menacing. Snow fell heavier now, almost deliberate, blanketing the ground in white silence. Marcus felt the first real hint of panic. But Shadow nudged his hand again, eyes fixed ahead. The dog's determination reminded him. Fear was only part of the journey. Action came next. The stranger pulled their hood tighter, eyes darting nervously. "We don't have much time," they whispered. "They'll know we're here soon. You need to move before." A low howl carried through the forest, distant, chilling, but unmistakably human in its anguish. Shadow's ears pricked. Marcus felt a cold knot of dread tighten in his stomach. The howl wasn't far. Too far to be accidental. "We're not alone," Marcus said, voice taut. "No," the stranger whispered. "They're already here." Snow swirled around them, dark shadows stretching unnaturally across the trees. Marcus looked down at the frozen ground, the patterns still etched in memory. Every step, every movement, could trigger an unseen observer. Every choice mattered. And as Shadow's growl rose again, Marcus realized, Nothing in this forest was as it seemed. And then, from the shadows, came a single deliberate sound, a footstep in the snow, careful, measured, watching. The forest had grown darker, almost black under the heavy sky, snow swirling in relentless gusts. Marcus's boots sank into soft drifts, each step uncertain, echoing faintly in the oppressive silence. Shadow padded ahead, nose to the ground, ears swiveling, guiding him toward the cabin the stranger had described. Marcus gripped the flashlight, its beam cutting a narrow path through the thick pine trunks, the cold gnawing deep into his bones. The stranger followed, shivering, their eyes darting to every movement in the trees. "They're close," they whispered. "Every step we take, they know." Marcus didn't answer. His mind raced, replaying the hiker's frozen face, the geometric patterns in the snow, the charred electronics. Every detail was a calculated message, but now the stakes were personal. Someone he trusted might be orchestrating this. Someone close. He couldn't shake the fear. Shadow suddenly stopped, ears pinned, hackles raised. Marcus froze, listening. The silence was thick, heavy, oppressive. Then a branch snapped sharply behind them. The stranger gasped, stepping back. Marcus turned. Nothing. The forest seemed to hold its breath. "Keep moving," Marcus whispered, voice low. Shadow nudged his hand, coaxing him forward, pulling him away from the cliffside and deeper into the woods. The snow crunched beneath their feet, each step deliberate, careful. Marcus could feel eyes watching, unseen, calculating. The cabin appeared suddenly, half buried in snow, timber gray and weathered. Windows were dark, frosted over, doors reinforced with rusted metal. Marcus glanced at the stranger. "This it?" "Yes," they whispered. Inside, the registry. All of it. Names, dates, everything. "But be careful. Some of them, they might already be inside." Marcus's pulse quickened. They approached cautiously, shadow in front, ears flicking, nose twitching. Marcus reached for the doorknob, cold, icy, and unyielding. He tried again, applying more pressure. With a reluctant creak, the door gave way. Inside, the cabin smelled of damp wood, decay, and faint metallic tang. Dust lay thick over tables and chairs. Marcus switched on the flashlight, the beam slicing through darkness. Shadow sniffed the floor, then paused near a small desk at the far end. The stranger approached cautiously. "It's there," they whispered. "The registry. Paper records, digital drives. Everything they use to control the disappearances. But some of them, they've been expecting us. That's why they left the cliff staged. That's why they watched the body. It's a warning." Marcus moved closer to the desk, flipping open drawers. Inside, he found folders, meticulously organized, names and dates in neat columns. Photographs, some of hikers, some of townspeople, were labeled with reviewed, processed, archived. Marcus's stomach turned. This was real. Too real. Every disappearance, every accident, documented with clinical precision. Shadow growled low, pacing near the doorway. Marcus looked up. A shadow moved outside the frosted window. Another figure. Watching. Waiting. "Marcus," the stranger whispered. "We're not alone. They're here." Before Marcus could react, the door slammed open. A figure stepped in, tall, imposing, face partially hidden under a hood. Marcus instinctively reached for his pistol. "Step away from the desk," the figure commanded, voice low but authoritative. "You shouldn't be here." Marcus held his ground. "Who are you?" he demanded. The figure lifted the hood slightly, recognizable features. Someone from his own town. Someone he had trusted. Betrayal twisted Marcus's gut. "Sheriff Reynolds," he breathed. Reynolds's face was hard, expression cold. "I warned you once," he said. "Now it's too late." The stranger gasped. You're part of it." Reynolds shook his head slowly, a grim smile forming. "I'm keeping the balance. Some things are necessary. You wouldn't understand." Marcus's hands trembled. Shadow growled deep and primal, the hair on his neck bristling. Marcus realized the dog had sensed this betrayal from the first moment. Every instinct had screamed it. You call this balance? Marcus demanded, voice cracking. These are human lives. Innocent people. Reynolds's gaze didn't waver. Innocence is a luxury, he said quietly. We decide what the town needs. Sacrifices are necessary to maintain order. The stranger stepped forward, voice rising. You're monsters. You've been killing people for decades. Reynolds's hand tightened on a hidden weapon, eyes flashing. You don't know the full story. None of you do. Marcus's mind raced. He had to act. The registry, the evidence, everything here could bring them down, but only if he survived. Shadow lunged suddenly, teeth bared, growl ripping through the air. Reynolds stumbled back, startled, giving Marcus the moment he needed. Marcus grabbed a folder, flipping it open. Names, dates, locations, photographs of people who had disappeared in the past months. He stuffed it into his coat. We're taking this with us, he said, voice low but resolute. Reynolds's eyes narrowed. You'll never leave here alive, he hissed. They'll finish what they started. Marcus backed toward the door, Shadow close at his heels. The stranger stumbled, snow falling from their coat, but Marcus grabbed their arm, pulling them along. Outside, the forest seemed darker, heavier, oppressive. The wind cut at their faces, but they had no choice. They had to escape. Footsteps followed, careful, measured. Reynolds wasn't chasing recklessly. He was calculating. Every movement, every choice Marcus made could be anticipated. They reached the tree-line. Shadow darted ahead, leading them through a maze of pines, snow covering tracks and erasing their trail. Marcus could feel adrenaline pumping, muscles straining, lungs burning in the freezing air. The registry weighed heavy in his coat. Evidence of decades of horror, betrayal, and manipulation. They paused in a small clearing, snow swirling in erratic patterns, almost alive. The stranger gasped, exhausted. They'll never forgive you for this, they whispered. Marcus didn't respond. Shadow's gaze was fixed on the forest beyond, ears twitching. Movement. Another figure, closer this time, breaking through the shadows. Marcus braced, pistol ready. It wasn't Reynolds. Another council enforcer. Morally gray, cold, methodical. Marcus fired a warning shot. The figure ducked, retreating into the trees. Shadow barked, then whimpered once, nudging Marcus. We need to keep moving, Marcus said. The stranger nodded, trusting him now completely. They navigated the forest, snow deepening, cold seeping through every layer. Marcus's thoughts were a storm of fear, anger, and resolve. They had evidence. They had the truth. And yet, the betrayal cut deeper than the snow beneath his boots. A man he had trusted, a town he had believed in, corrupted to the bone. Hours passed. Exhaustion threatened to claim them. But eventually, Marcus spotted a faint light in the distance, the ranger station. Safe. Or at least safer. They moved toward it, silent, careful. As they reached the door, Marcus paused, glancing back. Shadow stood at the edge of the clearing, eyes scanning the darkened forest. Marcus knelt beside him. We made it, boy, he whispered. Shadow nuzzled his hand, growl fading into a soft, reassuring pant. Inside the station, Marcus handed the registry to the authorities he trusted implicitly, those outside the corrupted council. The stranger remained close, finally allowing themselves to rest. Weeks later, arrests were made. Some council members fled, some were captured, but the scars remained, on Marcus, on the town, on everyone who had survived. Shadow lay at Marcus's feet, ever vigilant, as if guarding against threats no one else could see. The cliff, the snow, the whispered warnings, all remained etched in memory. Marcus sometimes woke in the night, the weight of betrayal pressing on him, the memory of the hiker, the staged patterns, the metallic whispers still echoing faintly. But there was resolution, quiet and fragile. Justice had been served, though imperfectly. And in Shadow's steady presence, Marcus found something he hadn't anticipated: hope. Even in darkness, even when faced with betrayal and terror, some truths could be uncovered. Some lives could be saved. And as he gazed at the snow-covered cliffs one last time, Marcus knew this. He would never forget what had happened. Not the fear. Not the betrayal. Not the haunting whispers in the cold forest. But he had survived. He had fought. And in Shadow's amber eyes, he saw the promise of protection, loyalty, and the courage to face whatever lay ahead.